Birmingham and the bass player in a band. So I started looking for bass players called John, because I once realized that my 3 favorite bass players were called John. And so I came up with this flyer and had like all these answers from several bass players called John. And what happened in the end is that I got to collaborate with one of the 3 guys that I had started with, which is John Taylor from Duran Duran, who are from Birmingham. And so we started, and basically because I didn't get any of the other guys, the younger bass players, and I started working with him, having like some sort of like the dialogue or correspondence, and actually the piece is called Correspondence, and it deals a lot with how we see each other. Like, it doesn't really matter where you're from and what you do, and if you're a big rock star or you're a Mexican artist, it's kind of like finding the similarities, and in a way it worked in, you know, it's not anymore like how we see the big thing over there, but how we see each other. And it was sort of like something that was starting like to be a very simple thing. It turned out like a big, complicated sort of piece of art, which included one video, which was him filming Mexico, me filming Birmingham, then sort of like edited against music of both places. What else? Then the thing was dubbed, and so he recorded my part in the original film. I recorded his part, and then there was some subtitles, and then there was there was the whole Duran Duran concert, only the bass line, just playing in the bass monitor, which sort of like wrapped everything around. And we put it first time in Birmingham, in this place, East Side Project, which is an artist-run space here. And then we put it in Salas Siqueiros, which is like adding like another sort of like spice into the dish, because it's the whole context. And at some point, Diana Pimentel asked me what this frivolous sort of thing that had to do with rock had to do with placing this piece in the context of Siqueiros. And I said, well, it's both like muralism and rock and roll are very democratic. You're supposed to be talking to everyone. But because I think that's the way we learned about, about a lot of the English culture is about that. And these are some views of the show. In this case, I installed a record shop, and you had like you could only buy records by bands who had bass players who were called John. So and there are a million. There's like the Velvet Underground, Queen, Led Zeppelin, Duran Duran, The Who, Jethro Tull, Europe, Fleetwood Mac, and so on and so on. And that's sort of like. And I'm sort of like interested in talking about these 2 projects because they were like sort of like complicated in a way. I mean, it's not like doing something in a studio. It involves a lot of other people, and I think now I'm sort of like starting to do the 3rd part of this, which now became a trilogy, and it's how in England they see us, and it's through also another sort of something related to rock and roll, and it's using a collection of someone and trying to figure out what he has that could represent us as Latin America, and all those cliches of the guerrillero, sandinista, and the lazy Mexican and the sombrero, and all those kind of things. Because I really, it is a lot of what I do. It's a lot about mirrors, but I think this is sort of like a very specific and very cultural sort of mirror where we can look at each other, where we can look at how the other sees us and how we see the other, and yeah, that's it.
I think it's also very interesting if you see the work that you're showing here, the newspaper posters of the Islington Gazette, which in a way was a way in which Laureana could find her way in being in London. So it was a way of tracing a map of where she was and start to find, let's say, not only physical directions, but also cultural directions, but also emotional directions, and how you transform and erase those pieces of news to make them this kind of emotional concrete points. So, Cool, perfect. 7 minutes, 18 seconds. We go to the next one. Matheus. I think what's interesting about Matheus also is that although he lives in Rio de Janeiro, he's been working in London on and off for at least the past 3 years. So and producing work here, producing work in London, which is part of the work that he's showing here, that he showed in the last Sao Paulo Bienal. I think now he's going to focus more on the new body of work, which is part of it that he's showing us in the book. So,
I want first to thank you to Pablo for working with him, for being here one more time in Pinta. I want to use my precious time to talk about the new pieces, the most recent pieces, those concrete pieces that are in the booth. They, well, to begin with, I really like what Pablo said about the role of the artist today, and I think in a very resumed and very short and maybe poor way to say it, but it's about trying to shape our present, to give this. I think that despite of living among very nostalgic people or people very anxious about the future, we live in a very specific and special moment. So maybe the role of the artist is to give form to the present that we live, that fortunately we don't know what is it. So this, coming back here, these concrete pieces, we have 4 there on the booth. I have a huge archive of that I collect newspapers since 10 or 12 years, and the small ones there, which I call slabs, they are always trying to make a dialectic between advertising and the imagery from the photojournalism. And I will always use, the same thing that's been wasted on one image is the advertising of the others, creating like a tension. The technique that I borrowed from was a technique from funerary tombs in Brazil, the cheapest one. So the image we're seeing here is the first huge slab I made. This was back in 2004. This is a collection of newspaper, of news of people that should have died but haven't died. So it's a tombstone. It's an epitaph, but without a corpse, because everything was ready to happen and hasn't happened. And this includes like fiction and reality as well. So this is supposed to be the last one, but it's here. It's vai morrer de novo means it's gonna die again. This is a character from a Brazilian soap opera, which is a very important thing in Brazilian culture. Even that people doesn't like it, it's very important. The actress, the character was supposed to die, but someone shoot a flash during the footage, and they had to repeat on the next day the scene of the die. So the headline is gonna die again. This is true, but I think it's true. It's like coming back from the dead alive. This guy was a witness of a crime, so he was taken to a cemetery, shot in the head, and buried. But he hasn't died, and like 13 hours later, he came out of the cemetery. Nobody helped him, because people thought he was a ghost. he had to walk for 2 hours to the hospital. So this is the news that he's actually going back to the cemetery to make the reconstruction of the crime. This is a horse during, there was a policeman on the horse during a tempest in Rio, and he stepped on electricity. Well, it's something that was open, that's supposed not to be open. The horse rider hasn't died, but the horse died, but they connected a lamp in the horse and the lamp turned on. The last one is the silicon saves shoot as well. This girl, she was blocked. She was driving her car in the highway in Rio, and the guy shot her, but then the bullet was kept in silicone because it's like advertising the wonders of having silicone prostheses in very dangerous cities. Besides of the like, there's a very fun character, but at the same time, the very it's a way of deal with being ironic without being cynic, and that's the same, just more or less the same approach I'm trying to do with the small ones, and which I started to do last year. There's a huge gap between discovering the technique and its appliance, and it's like trying to shape the contradictions of our time and without being cynical, but at the same time dealing with this very, sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's tragic. And it's trying to show the contradictions of this very quotidian space, which is the newspaper, and try to like bring it in. And this technique, in a way, gives it a very historical, literally weight of the thing. So it looks, you put in newspaper, which is something that has a very, very short life. There's an expression in Portuguese that says that whatever comes in the newspaper the next day is just wrapping fish. And so when you put this in the concrete, it's something that's supposed to last. So there's a material contradiction itself in the work. So I think that makes gives it a very specific archaeological quality, but an archaeological of the present. So I'm not trying to talk about the past or even the future. I'm just trying to grasp in what's like happening now. Yes.
No, I think the other thing that I would like, that I would like to point out is that all of us, in a way, live between cultures and live between the place we were born and the place we work. So you come and go. Yeah. And I guess also we do this kind of negotiation with, between places, between situations, between past and present, between and I think it's also like what you do when you confront a new work in London, also try to deal with the knowledge that you have and confronting yourself to new knowledge. We're talking about dealing with the contradictions of our time. So maybe we go next with Felipe, because I think I'm interested in the way Felipe, through his still screens, recovers certain graphics of the past and puts them in confrontation. Sometimes things that would look, for example, you have political images next to psychedelic images, and you put these tensions in evidence. So maybe you want to talk a little bit about it and whatever else about your work you want to talk.
The image I selected two briefs, two basic series of works, and the third one are the silk screens, which are here in the booth. So I invite you, if you want to see them, I don't have images of them here with me, but you're invited to stop by and look at them. But I can tell you about them